Welcome to Crash Talk. Yay! Yeah, this is like an intimate gathering, so feel free to, relax and shake it off. Maybe I'm the only one who feels a little stiff and nervous. But you are inside the CVA, which is the Center for Visual Artists. If you didn't know that, we are a nonprofit organization. We support artists, local artists mainly, at all ages of their lives. We exhibit them, we have education opportunities, we have outreach opportunities, and we also hope to be a platform for the community to come into this space, explore ideas, express themselves, ask questions about art, themselves, each other. Thus we have things like this, panel talk, panel discussion. You also walked through Self-Recognition Through the Other, which is the exhibition that is on view right now, if you didn't know that. Kunjo is here from Brooklyn by way of Wisconsin, who curated the show. Yay! Zalika is one of the artists in the show. And we have some other artists in the show that are in the audience. So, Self-Recognition Through the Other is sort of about self-awareness and healing through art. We wanted to create a panel discussion that kind of focused or dove a little bit deeper into those ideas. So Kunjo and I kind of talked about people, local people who would be good to speak on those things, and also other people. So I will do a few introductions. Kunjo, you know Brooklyn. He has work up front, which is a new body of work. His main work recently has been Sleeping Beauty, which is a series that depicts Black men sleeping, kind of investigating Black masculinity and vulnerability. Yes. Korinn Annette Jeffries. She is from Durham, but based here in Greensboro. Just flew in from Toronto, where she was doing a play. You showed the play?
Yes, we had a reading.
Reading. Wow. That's like international. Korinn is a playwright. Studied theater at A&T.
Happy Pride.
And how I know Korinn is she did a play, a reading, inside this space that was titled The N-Word Spelled Out, exclamation point. They kind of blew us away. I mean, that was like an awesome experience for this space. I see her work as sort of like claiming space. She even says in her bio, which I really enjoy, Korinn's works are about being. That's a nice statement. Okay, next, Zalika U Ibaorimi is from Philly, but is studying at University of Texas in Austin. So flew out from there to be here for this show. Wow. To Greensboro. We got people coming to Greensboro for stuff. That's amazing, right? So Zalika is a doctoral student there, so getting her PhD, that's also huge. She's also teaching. PhD in African and American Diaspora Studies. Zalika also does a lot, looking into a lot, researching a lot. Another thing I enjoy is she's invested in Black films and their spectators' ways of knowing shame and desire through material and digital public space. I kind of was like, I feel like your whole bio kind of makes me like, whoa. Like I have to be quiet for a minute and think, visualize those things. So let's get into some of these questions. I think just to start it off and get like a basic idea of your work a little bit more for our audience is to tell us, each of you, how self-awareness plays a role in the work that you do, whether it's like the process or final things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go on.
process right now does a lot with the healing journey I'm on. So I am working towards being a better human being, and I acknowledge that sometimes the people that I work with are in the same space that I'm in as well. And I learned that through conversation or getting some background on them. And yeah, I think it's really important to, as a cis hetero black man, and I'm shooting a lot of other cis hetero black men, to recognize them. It comes full circle, to recognize like what I'm going through and that they're going through the same thing, and to hope to create some work that is healing for us, or it could at least invite someone to think about wanting to heal some of the scars that we have in common. So yeah. Because I don't know if you want to do this one. This one is nice.
I would say self-awareness in my process manifests as me being like very, very critical of myself. I'm very aware of the way a lot of other people in my industry operate, and I hold myself to a really, really high standard that may not always be attainable. So when I watch my work back, I'm critiquing it probably a lot harder than it needs to be. So I would say, yeah, mostly just a lot of critical approach to my work is how self-awareness manifests in my work and my process. Lots of drafts, lots of crossing things out.
Self-awareness. In terms of self-awareness in my own work, I will say for me, it definitely probably started with my love for horror films and things like that. I am a pastor's daughter, so I grew up in a very religious sort of family household. And so you can imagine being a black queer femme, how interesting that could be. But what I'll say is, as time went on throughout my process, I was originally just a painter, and I no longer wanted to do that anymore. It didn't really move my spirit. However, I started doing this research study at Georgia State called The Daughters of Bartman Return Their Gaze. And I was very interested in looking at a series of black women in the ways that they were dealing with intraracial sexual shame. I wasn't too concerned with questions of black people and white people. I just felt like it was something, I don't want to say it was tired or played, but I was mostly invested in what does othering look like in the context of black people, an already marginalized group. What happens when there are certain individuals who are even othered among their own? So looking at women who were sexually shamed for their sexual decision-making practices, being called hoes, whores, trans women, all of these experiences, I wanted to put that together and think that through. And as I conducted that study, one of the things that was kind of startling to me was you would think that there was some sadness around it, and of course there was some sadness, but it was the way that most of them sort of expressed to me in a roundabout way that they no longer felt like people, they felt like things. To a certain extent, they felt inhuman. But it didn't feel like the end of the world either. For them, they felt like it was a newer way of being. They felt like there was even a possibility within that. If you're already disposable or discarded, if you're already deemed trash, they were like, well, I can just go off and be trash and do whatever I want. Like, now I can be the biggest mess possible. And seeing that, I incorporated this photo series. I used this mode of documenting study or methodology called photo voice, where women would take a photo of what it feels like to live in sexual shame and obscurity, and then the second image was, what does the future look like with this type of shame? So after this project was over and moving toward my doctoral program, I decided to put myself through a similar process. However, I started with something called the Shame Study, which later evolved into the Visual Body Journal. And it was a very othering experience, but I think it was the fact that I felt like I was becoming other to myself that was the most, I guess, it made me more self-aware to not even recognize myself and try to figure out who I was all over again.
So, in self-awareness, I feel like that there is an extreme, like, vulnerability, like, similar to what you all are talking about, like, you have to put yourself out there in a way, or there's a change of a way of seeing, and in thinking about the work that you do, there's an idea or a conversation around performance. So, yeah, instead of me talking about it, maybe like talk about whether you are like anti-performative, like that's not what this is, or do you play into the performance in the exchanges that you have in your work?
I have a big issue with the white gaze. I even have an issue with selling work, especially with the idea of wanting to have a coffee table book at the end of my Sleeping Beauty series, and thinking about who's going to buy that book, and thinking about what people see when they see these beautiful black men being normal, just doing what we all do, who's looking at them in a way that's kind of opposite of what I'm trying to do. So it's challenging to, as a photographer, I don't want to engage with this whole performance art thing at all. I don't want to, but I also want to share. I want to share, and I want to involve my family, my friends, and whoever else is potentially lacking the resources that I have. But you know, Devin, you know me personally, I really don't like crowds. I don't need to be like, I don't need my name or anything. I don't really need the credit. I really am invested in doing the work. And sometimes I'm like, damn, sharing this photo, I can see how it's a part of that work that I'm trying to do. But I also always think about like who's watching, and if I put a price tag on this, am I exploiting my brothers? Like, am I exploiting them? Like, because who can afford a $50, $100 book? I don't know how much people are selling like coffee table books these days, but because Sleeping Beauty. So here's Sleeping Beauty. I'm DMing black men that I don't know. And I'm telling them that I want to shoot them for this project, and most of the time, before I even get to a time and date, most of these black men are triggered by the idea of laying in the bed for me. And I remember thinking about, should I get a homegirl to help me? But then I was like, damn, that's kind of shady. I'm not gonna like trick these dudes, because I've been doing this for over 2 years, and I'm only at 60 something, and my goal is 100. So I've been doing this for over 2 years. A lot of people know black men. A lot of people know I'm doing it, but no one cares to help me have this conversation. So it's a lot of groundwork. And so when someone agrees to do it, we don't always get coffee. or talk on the phone. Sometimes it's just like, this is my address, I see you that day. And I'm walking in these bedrooms, I'm nervous. And I'm only bringing this up because I'm thinking about like performance. Like what I do is not a performance. It's challenging, it's scary. I'm talking to men who, some of them are homophobic. Some of them think they need to protect this version of masculinity, and they think I'm a threat. And I'm trying to like tell them like, yo, there's something else over here, and are you okay with exploring this idea that may be different from what you were taught? And I got to do that in a space where it's every person I've shot, 99% of the time, no one else is home. And I'm telling y'all, like, cis hetero black men, they can make, I felt uncomfortable because I felt like, damn, if I say the wrong thing and trigger this person, they may like snap and kick me out and just like be on some other. And sometimes, a lot of times, they don't want to do the shoot in their beds. So they're like, yeah, I'm down to, help you. I appreciate the project, but can we do this on my couch? And it's like, damn, like, you want to distance yourself as far as possible from your natural humanity of what we all do. Like, we all sleep in the bed, and the project is about us sleeping. And the work that I do, just the idea of someone telling me it's performance art, it kind of makes me mad. I don't want to have anything to do with performance art because I'm just going to leave it with this. The amount of energy, the amount of mental energy it takes to talk to so many strangers and to enter so many spaces of people I've never met in my life. There's nothing about that is cute and I could sell. So, yeah.
To speak on what Kunjo was saying about the white gaze, that issue came up a lot in my piece, Nigger exclamation point, because there's this idea that it's gonna make people like uncomfortable because of the title, because it says it like on everything for the branding for the show. And I just didn't care because it was my play and that was the point. It's supposed to make people uncomfortable. And I find a lot of times when I'm creating work that I just try to focus on creating the work and not really other people's perceptions of it. I create stuff for me, what I would want to see and what I enjoy. And so, well, I create for me, but I also create for Black people specifically. And so I want them to see themselves in my work and I want them to enjoy my work. So if I am advancing Black people and I'm pleased with my work, that's what matters to me. And I'm just far too passionate to be performative. I can't fake it, so.
Okay. Well, I think I have maybe a different understanding of performance. There's someone that I know, and I thought this was really important. They talked about enactments and performances and like the differences between those two words. However, one thing that I do know is, obviously, I'm a Black woman. I'm a Black queer woman at that, and I'm a Black femme. So, as far as I'm concerned with a lot of the work that I do, unfortunately, it comes with the performance. Because I have to really think about who do I actually want for people to see today. And also, even if I make a choice of how I want to be represented, in terms of spectatorship, I have no control over what it is that they choose to see. This is something that I even teach to my students. We've been trying to talk through visual analysis. And one of the things we were doing the other day, we were looking at Solange. And I asked them, like, who is this? And, I have a lot of like white students as well. So they say to me, oh, well, this is an artist, this is a dancer. And I'm like, who is this? Like, who are you looking at? They just didn't want to say that she was black. There were so many things tied up in it. And so the reality of what performance is, particularly with this project, it is a project of performance. Because in a lot of ways, I'm thinking about what it means to kind of be a trickster on the internet. So the only way that this project works is by it actually being on the internet. So the way that it was shown today, this is the first time I've ever seen it like this, because the full intention is that it's supposed to only be on the internet, only on social media sites. So Twitter, Instagram, all of these things. This is a commentary on sex work. This is a commentary on just the ways that Black women interact. How some people may see Black women or even femmes take selfies. They don't necessarily look at that as like art. Whereas you have this difference between a selfie and a self-portrait. My goal is to kind of blur those lines together and kind of show people that, you know, while some people think it's cute or frivolous or whatever it is, that there is sort of like an intentionality behind it. Black femmes, also Black women, have a certain way of performing a certain embodied knowledge. It is all theory, you know, at the end of the day. But I think what I've appreciated about this project is every time like an image of like my nude body goes across, most of the time people don't even see it. It's rendered invisible for reasons of a lot of Black folk not liking it because they don't want to see me in those ways. They don't want to see me represented in those ways. There's also this like commentary or critique of like what professionalism is or what I should be doing in my professional day-to-day. Also, it's one of those things where I have to negotiate. Sometimes I put it on Facebook to see what happens, and it really troubles certain people, and I get a series of messages about that. But I think also what has been really interesting is the surveillance aspect of what goes into what is seen or what is not seen and the performance of the surveillance. So most times if people put it in the hashtag, they won't be able to see what actually comes up because I'm ghost banned regularly. So I think for me, it depends on what the performance is. I think to a certain degree, a performance is like the mode and how you do or how you go about doing things. And if you're not comfortable with the word performance, then call it an enactment. But I do think it is a certain process that goes into it. But I think it also speaks to this whole idea of ingenuity or like this whole idea of what's real and what's fake. And when we're talking about social media, the reality is you really don't know.
Can you ask them to just like shush for a little bit? Sorry. Thinking about how this conversation has developed and keeping self-awareness in mind and hearing you talk. I think the three of you like work a lot with yourselves. I mean, I think that's what artists do, right? Like the way that we make is from inside. Like it's hard to imagine anything else. But do you all rely on support from specific communities or general communities? And maybe talk about like who that is and in what ways.
The only reason I respond like this is because the community that I used to hurt the most supports me the most today. I used to be like really homophobic, and it was just taught. It was normal. So, the queer community helps me out the most. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of my homies are like, bitch, we know this is needed. Like, yeah, I'm down. You know what I mean? Like, what do you need me to do? Because this is not a conversation we need. And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but, you know, just getting to 100 has been so challenging. And a lot of people for Sleeping Beauty specifically have a lot of different ideas and places they would want it to go. But unfortunately, I do have to prioritize this photo series because from the statistics that I've read, cis hetero black men are harming people at a higher rate than other groups. So I'm really not that invested in having certain conversations about how people identify, as far as like, because in my bio it says, Sleeping Beauty, the Healing Project, I'm shooting black men or male body perceived people. And a lot of people that I know that follow me, they want to have more conversations surrounding that. But like I said, I do have to prioritize the project because of the issues that cis hetero black men are dealing with. But just back to your question, every queer person I know, because one other way I'm getting subjects is always when I shoot one person, I say to them, could you please refer another person? That's how I do it. It saved me a lot of time. And so a lot of the times I've been circulating in the queer community because they are the ones who are comfortable with this conversation, and they're not dealing with a lot of toxic masculinity issues and fragile masculinity issues. And that's one conversation. That's just one conversation. Patriarchy is another conversation, and I believe patriarchy has no gender, but that is another conversation. I'm not invested in that conversation that much, but the people that are in the queer community that I've photographed definitely show up for me and support me, and I've made it to a space where I'm so comfortable with my language, with my demeanor, with how I dress. People question me now and asking me if I'm gay. It's gotten to that point, and I don't really care, so I'm good, but it's more like, my eyes are open even more of how fucked up I was, and how sad I was, and how I didn't think for myself. And I say that to say that it doesn't mean I'm not still working on things. I definitely am not perfect. When I find out someone's pronouns and I mispronounce it or something, I catch myself and I'm still doing the work. But queer black men, gay black men, trans men support me the most, more than cis hetero black women. And that's a whole nother conversation. That's another conversation. Because, with the work I'm doing, who's perpetuating the patriarchy, who's perpetuating a lot of the toxic masculinity, I don't know if we want to get into that, but on my end, who's supporting me, it's queer community.
Unfortunately, I haven't quite found a community to support my work yet. From the perspective that I create from and the medium I create in, it's just not as common to find support for it at all. I'm in theater, and unless it's Tyler Perry, nobody cares. I would say my family supports my work, but that's probably just because I'm me and I'm part of the family. But I find that in my work, I'm having to do a lot more you might like it, just try it out. And a lot of giving away my work for free, which is very difficult because it's incredibly time consuming to create my work. And of course, I deal with actors that I want to pay because I too am an actor and I understand the struggle of being an actor and not getting paid for all the hours that you spend memorizing a script and doing the research to bring a character to life. And even the research I do as a playwright to put the script together. I too would like to be compensated for my work. So hopefully I find a community to support my work one day. But right now, that's just the reality of what I'm doing.
So I will say, I do get a lot of like weirdness sometimes around my work, the ways that people interact with it. I get a lot of questions, but I will say I am fortunate enough to have a community because it's just like a community of people who see themselves in the work, and I think that's been like the beauty of it. So I'm very supported by a lot of sex workers, a lot of folk in that community. Other like Black queer femmes, they definitely support me a lot. My daddy actually really like supports me, and I mean he's like a pastor, so I know a lot of people are like, well, how does this work together? But he's incredibly supportive. My grandmother is. I will say one of the difficult parts about support is trying to gauge how many people are actually interested in the work and how many people are interested in sexualizing the work in a particular manner. So far, cishet men have not been my favorite people when it comes to engaging this work. And I don't make any bones about it. You know, there's often conversations where, you know, people present like they're actually interested in the work, but they read it so overtly sexual that they don't realize that they fall into the trap of like what the actual work means. So I actually kind of prefer that it happens that way because all I just do is put it right back into the work again. So yeah, I think definitely Black women, queer folk, and the sex worker community are those who really hold me like close. And then there are also some academic spaces who are trying to help me kind of build the artistic practice into the academic work at the same time. So that's been helpful.
All right, well, speaking of supportive community members, I'd like to turn it over to our beautiful audience to ask any dying questions to any three.
I can start off with just the whole idea of you all mentioned gaze, and then I'm hearing about being an object as well, or using other people as objects. And I don't have a specific question, but maybe can all of y'all just sort of talk a little bit about who's in charge of that, and who, I mean, Kunjo, you're using other people as the object to reflect. And Zalika, I know you're using yourself very intentionally. Just maybe talk a little more about that objectification. Sometimes it's a good thing.
I don't know how much I can speak in depth on that, but I do know that for me what's important is consent. Consent for the work I do is everything. So even though my subject may look at it like, yo, you the homie, whatever you need, I'm always going to reiterate, like, if you're not comfortable with this going online, out there into that universe, let me know. You get the last word, and I always, share with the people I shoot, like, I'm not here to exploit you. That's a conversation that has to be had. And look, art is fun, we love art. We learn as we go with art. So I was in a space where, I mean, if I would have saw Zalika's work 6 years ago, I just would have been like, yo, Zalika is a baddie, and just ignored what she was doing. And, when I eventually learned what the male gaze was, I started to incorporate that into my work and into my conversations. And I say all that to say, like, what is our responsibility? How often are we thinking about what's our responsibility? No one wants to be called lazy, but if you're being lazy, you're being lazy. You know what I mean? So just even in just basic conversations. Don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I stay on someone's shit list, but I'm in a space where I've come too far to not, plant seeds in people. I've come too far to walk away from a conversation, making sure that I didn't pour everything out of my heart into that conversation. I'm just not in that space no more. So the conversation surrounding sharing power has been so important to me. So again, before I walk away from this conversation, I really want you to know, it's not fully about me, it's about us. And we gotta have this conversation about what it's gonna look like once it leaves us and go out there. And it's just a conversation. But, we love art. A lot of us just started art and we're just having fun. And we're not in that, sometimes we're not lucky enough to have a mentor. I didn't have a mentor. And in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I ain't gonna lie, it's not the best place. So when you pick up a camera and you're looking at other people, you're not looking at Gordon Parks, you're looking at the homie on Instagram with 50,000 followers, and he got all these baddies in the hotel. And I'm like, ooh shit, that's the lit right there. I need to do that. And a lot of us start that way, and it's unfortunate. And so, yeah, I think that conversation has a lot to do with responsibility and being genuine and authentic and understanding that, unfortunately, a part of this is giving it away. You know what I mean? And so once we give it away, you can fuss all you want. It's on the wall, it's on the internet. And so it's just, but you know what? It's all good. It's just a conversation away. That's all. We can just have a conversation to make everyone feel comfortable about this process. But fuck the white gaze. Fuck the male gaze. And there's some other gazes, but I don't have personal experience with it. But there's definitely other things happening in the queer community. There's definitely a lot of fuck shit happening from corporations and whatnot. So, but yeah, that's all I have.
I think in response to gays being a good thing, I would say that I believe that a lot of people's perception of me based on Instagram and things online has brought people to my work. I know that I like to use that to my advantage. I know when I post a selfie, more people care about it than when I post an article that I've written or my plays or a review of a play or anything like that. And I try to just make sure I'm doing both because I want you to see the work and I like taking selfies. I like being in the mirror. I like dressing up and I like looking cute. So I'm going to make sure that I bring you to the work and you see it. And I'm very vocal about the things that I believe in. So you'll hear about my message and all of that in conjunction with these selfies and all these rap lyrics and everything else. At the end of the day, being a multidimensional person, you are going to get every aspect of me. And if that one part brings you into the work, so be it. Here it is, take it or leave it.
I think in terms of your question regarding objecthood, so I'll say for me, it kind of begins with home. I'm trying to figure out exactly what objecthood looks like, and it worked out perfectly that I just so happen to be from Philly, and we have words to describe those things. So in the piece that's here, one of the things that you'll see is there's a tattoo that says John written out. In Philly, everything is a John. So it just works out. A person is a John, this table is a John, this place is a John, all of it. But also, there is this very specific, Black vernacular that comes with this type of objecthood. So even though it speaks to a personhood, it is interesting that it also calls back to a particular objecthood. So sometimes, like, if, you know, my friends and I are doing something, or somebody does something interesting, or what some people would deem, you know, ratchet or ghetto, people be like, you acting like a John. You know, and so based on those expressions and based on how it was, or my embodiment, the things that I had to deal with growing up, whether it be in school, whether it be walking down the street, having certain experiences where, let's just be real, if you're a Black girl, for a lot of Black girls, it's almost like not being a Black girl. It's almost as if childhood in some ways is inaccessible to you because of the ways that people interact with your body. Black women are demonized in particular ways already. So imagine that, but for a Black girl, there is no sort of real girlhood. You are measured along the same lines as being a Black woman. There have been several studies that have shown and indicated that to be a Black girl is for even your own people to perceive you as more advanced or more mature in certain areas, more knowledgeable about sex, more knowledgeable about doing criminal acts and things like that. So putting all these things together, I was really, really interested and invested in this idea of objecthood, taking experiences that young Black girls face, Black women face, but also I was also curious about the implementation of just the femme, because the femme is not a space that is just limited to women. It's a space where, you know, there are men who embody feminists. There are agender people, non-binary people, genderqueer people who also embody feminists. But because it's such a vulnerable space to be, it is something that people often think that they can kind of pull and pick apart. They think that it renders a certain type of softness, those types of things. So in terms of becoming an object, I felt the need to kind of engage in the history of what that objecthood looked like for so many people. And one of the references that is big in my life is I do look at the South African woman, Zalika U Ibaorimi. I start there because of the ways that she was forced to perform. And so with that said, it led me to performance artists that were intentionally trying to do that work and those enactments and how they were kind of using their bodies as tools of resistance or using their own objecthood as a tool of resistance. So I look at people like Adrienne Piper or Renee Cox or Carrie Mae Weems and artists like that. And then I place that in conjunction to porn study scholars like Dr. Murray Miller-Young or Ariane Cruz or someone like Jennifer Nash. Putting these things together because for so long, Black women and deviants, and still to this day, are synonyms, and Black femme and deviants are like almost synonyms of each other. This is how I think through objecthood.
Other questions? You're not like bursting? I have so many.
I'm very interested in this whole idea of identity and exploring that. One or whomever, to me there's this, it seems like we can't talk about identity of a person. It's hard to do that without talking about what that person is not, the opposite of them. It's really hard for us, for anyone to describe or think about a person and even ourselves without comparing to something else, comparing to the opposite. And to me, that's kind of troubling how we don't even have language to express what something is without talking about what it's not. And so I just wondered if any of you had any ideas related to that.
I think that's interesting. I personally do not feel like it is necessarily vital to the discussion of what someone is to discuss what someone is not. I feel like there are many ways to do that, starting with just, I don't know, what your favorite color is. Like, my favorite color is green. Okay, I don't have to talk about your favorite color being red or how I don't like red for me to state that my favorite color is green. And at that same time, I'm identifying who I am by telling you my favorite color is green. So I feel like it's very easy to do that. Again, like I said, my works are about being. So usually in my plays, the negativity of the Black experience and Black people's relationship with white people is subsequent. It's not the primary focus of the play because, again, just people. And you can just tell from watching the play that they're different and that the characters are not meant to be white, not because I specify it, but because the way they interact and the things that they do that are just distinctly Black. Without I'm trying to find the words, I'm sorry. Just thinking about, you can identify yourself without mentioning another person at all, I feel. And I think in showing the human interaction by being authentic of who that, or being the authentic version of that person, you are able to do that. So in reality, as Black people, it is just a consequence of us being Black that we end up discussing the white gaze. Because when we walk around, there's a white gaze. In this room, there's a white gaze. You can't really avoid it. So that's why I think it comes up and why it may feel like we are addressing things in, not in defense, but in, see if I know the word I'm looking for, like juxtaposition, because it's not necessarily saying like, we have to compare ourselves to white people to identify ourselves, but that's just a consequence of who we are and the world that we live in.
So I definitely agree with you. I think it also depends on what the subject matter is. So my work is mostly about the idea of disrespectability. So in order to talk about disrespectability, you kind of have to know what respectability is. So when I'm thinking about sex workers, let's just face it, sex work is one of those things where across the board, it's not a favorable occupation, whether you're white. And I know, there are a lot of conservative Black people out here in the world. And that's just something that I think is also the interesting part about this whole idea of the white gaze and all these differences, because the reality is, I don't know most Black folk who would find anything favorable, anything respectable about sex work. So in a lot of ways, this is why I say the one thing that I don't do is I'm not really interested in whiteness because it doesn't really lend itself to that in the work. But what I will say is a lot of it is, are you a respectable lady or are you a whore? You know what I'm saying? It kind of goes between those two zones. Or it is also about, well, what is the perception that you have in your community? I think one of the people, at least in terms of literature, who's really, really great at this is Toni Morrison. I don't know how many of you have read Sula by any chance? Okay, so Sula is one of those books where, Toni Morrison, across most of her work, she's a writer, she's an author who has a way of kind of smacking you in the face with the truth and then trying to hold your hand afterward and being like, now, you had this judgmental idea about this person, and then she smacks you around, and then she's just kind of like, now look at them again, and you're like, whoa, I kind of see myself in this person, and maybe that's why I wasn't really vibing with this image. Sula did that for me. For so many people, it is so hard for people to understand, how could this Black woman sleep with her childhood best friend's husband? They're like, what is wrong with her? But what I think this book is more so about is how a black community that is known as the bottom, which is interesting too, a black community known as the bottom needed a bottom. I mean, if you want to think about it in a queer way, that's another way of thinking it through too. But they needed a bottom in order to feel validated or less othered within their own community. So Sula was sort of like the town whore. That is who she was. So in order to feel empowered and validated, they had to ensure that a person like Sula existed because she represented everything that they were not. They were the complete opposite of what she was. So for so many people, it could have been, I might be abusing my children, but at least I'm not Sula. Like, I might be cheating on my husband or my wife, but at least I'm not Sula. So that not part was so powerful in the story that it was literally the reason why she was one of the most antagonistic figures in the text. And I'm very, very interested in the ways that black femmes or even black women just haunt spaces with their antagonisms by being the not.
I just want to say also, like, entitlement. I think entitlement plays a role in that conversation too. When I'm walking down the street, how much do you think you deserve to know or you ought to know about someone?
This question's like you kind of like mentioned already, but talking about Sula, but you're currently a doctoral student. I was wondering how much like the academic world and the art world like work together with you, and also how much like, they probably would push back against one another.
Okay, so I'll be honest, there's probably been so much I can say as a graduate student to protect myself. But I will say that I do have an amazing dissertation advisor who definitely was emailing me like, take pictures, like you need this has to go on your CV. And the first academic article that I'm working on right now is actually a comparative sort of analysis between Adrian Piper's Food for the Spirit piece, where in 1971, she was doing like a series of meditations, reading Immanuel Kant, and she kept looking at herself in the mirror because she got this sense that she was disappearing. She was becoming other to herself, literally. So much and so that the images that she captured, and some of them she looks like she is disappearing. I use this piece to sort of think through my own work from 2 years ago called The Shame Study. So that was a piece that I was working on. And an Africanist and / black queer theorist, Dr. Xavier Liberman was one of the people who really helped me sort of put that piece together. So there are some like scholars who are very much like, excuse me, you're not in an MFA program, what the fuck do you think this is? While there are others who are like, you know what, you're an artist, we just have to figure out a way to recognize that you're also an academic and put these things together. Because my artistic process literally leans on the academic work. I see everything in pictures, and I'm gonna be honest, I was an artist before I was an academic, so the academic thing, I don't wanna say it was accidental, but I was doing a lot of community organizing work in Philadelphia. I had these projects where I was really invested in black women's sort of sexual politics. And then I kind of got bored with just making it just about women because I just didn't want to. I was really invested in that femme question. And how do we also incorporate other queer communities into that? So as time went on, I was like, wow, like, this is different because I feel like it made the process 10 times longer because now I have to really, really study. So I'm studying every single day, trying to map these things together. I'm looking at old daguerreotypes of black women. I'm looking at daguerreotypes of like literally drag queens. I'm looking at all of these sort of images and trying to place them together. And I'm studying the works of a bunch of queer theorists, performance studies theorists, film studies theorists, and also porn studies. So porn studies is like literally kind of like at the base of my work, because I know that for so many people the work is very pornographic, and for some people it is titillating. And I don't really tell people how they need to look at my work. I can give you a suggestion, but you're gonna do what you wanna do with your eyes. You know what I'm saying? So I hope at least when they experience the work, or if they experience it on social media, the intention is, I just hope that it lingers. I hope that it stays with you, and I hope that it makes you feel something.
I know the question wasn't for me, but I have a comment. I've been presenting my plays at an academic conference amongst like theater professors and that sort of thing. I did it last year, and then I did it, last year. Okay, I did it 2018 and 2019. And I've recently stumbled upon this comparative analysis of A Raisin in the Sun and Abram Hill's On Strivers Row. So it's two different portraits of Black family life. One is in the 30s and one is in the 50s. So with academics and theater and that sort of thing, you know, Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun is like gold, hated all of it. And in writing this essay, I wanted to talk about that. And so I'm reaching out to these academics and I'm asking them, you know, because a lot of them, the last conference I went to, we watched the Lorraine Hansberry documentary, and I had lots of questions because, you know, Lorraine she was a wild one. And I brought them up and they were just kind of like, close it off to it because, you know, Lorraine Hansberry, she's like their god, you know, that's the playwright to be. And so just like, I think in academic spaces, it's really important as an artist to have a willingness to push and to just make sure that your voice is heard, because a lot of times there's an accepted standard of what you're supposed to appreciate and how you're supposed to think. And it's like, if no one's thinking otherwise, no one will move forward. So, gotta just be ahead of them.
Okay, so all of you are making, phenomenal work. What do you think, if anything, this work will speak to this moment in your lives years from now, when you look back at it? What, if at all, would there be like a statement or art words, in a sense that you can look back and see that you're creating through this work?
I would like to hope that in the future I can pull up the directory and see more healing spaces for Black men, and see more Black men showing each other love, minus the hyper-masculinity and there's a lot I want for the future regarding my work. My work right now it's not aimed to make anyone feel uncomfortable, which is so, but it makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable. And I know that the group that it makes, I know the group that feels uncomfortable, so it's interesting. But my work right now, it's normal stuff. It's a picture of another person giving another person flowers. It's a picture of a person sleeping. It's funny how that's, it creates so many conversations. So hopefully my work in the future, I hope in the future all this stuff is normalized. I don't know, should I talk about cops shooting us in the street? Does it relate? I don't know, I'm just trying to humanize this and remind people that I know that you may judge the book by the cover, you may see it, but nah, like, I'm just trying to go to the store, get some juice, come back, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep, just like you, live a normal life just like you. So, yeah, hopefully a lot of black men appreciate the things that this world has to offer. We are in a space, because Valentine's Day is around the corner, and somehow this beautiful flower is exclusive to one group. I mean, that's what we're taught. But I love roses. Is that okay? Like, I love roses, I love the way they smell, and no one ever gave me any. And so, I don't know, what does that say about my moms or my father or my friends or the people who call me like brother and the people who love me? When I get gifts, it's never roses, it's never flowers, it's never, or if I need time to, try to get some affirmations from my people, it doesn't look like how I would like it to look. Like, affirmations for me is not going to the basketball court to play basketball or go get a haircut. I got dreads, I don't need to be in the barbershop. All these versions of like how black men heal and whatever are timed together, that's not my vision. So hopefully in the future, again, there's just like, man, we can come together and we can sit on the floor, do some yoga, I don't know, whatever, but better than what we're doing right now. So hopefully my work speaks to that in the future in some shape or form.
For me, I personally would like to leave a mark of unifying the diaspora. It's a very lofty dream, but I would love for my work to bring people together, like Black people from various cultures all over the world, just to see that though we are different, very different, we are also very similar. The Black experience globally, I believe, has a lot of similarities. And I think by highlighting how different we are, we realize how similar we are at the same time. And I would also like to inspire literacy, because I love to read. That too.
I think if I were to kind of go back, I would hope that if it's no longer on Twitter, I don't know, they might be on to the next new thing. We might have something else. I'm sure it is. Technology is meant to advance or whatever. So I hope, hopefully I can just transfer those images to another platform. But in terms of what I hope and or intend for the work to do, I don't really necessarily have this goal of trying to humanize Black femmes or humanize women or even queer folk, because I do understand that we're tired. We're tired. I think I'm tired of trying to project certain types of images. I think I care, but not to the extent of I need to prove to somebody that I'm a human being. I'm not interested in anymore. I'm done with the conversation. And I think this is why I've been more so invested in this whole thing about thingliness and humanness and all those types of things. Because I think at the end of the day, I just want the feeling to linger. What I do want, I hope in time that there will be some sort of Black sexual politics for women who have experienced this marginalization, for femmes who have experienced this type of marginalization, so that there is support for people who go through this. One of the things that I was asking some of my folk is like, for so many people, this started in their childhood. So what happens when you know that there's just a certain way that people are going to interact with you and your body, and it may never stop and it may never discontinue? We don't prepare. I think we're afraid to prepare young people for that. It's not necessarily a pessimistic conversation, but how do we prepare someone for that type of marginalization? And I hope in time that people will feel supported. They don't have to be ashamed of being a little sort of non-normative in that sense. And I really do hope that there is a true Black sexual politics that will be recognized or identified as such. The ways, the normalcy of the everyday things that so many Black femmes do, so many Black women do, it's an embodied knowledge. It's a theorization, but in motion. You know what I'm saying? It may not be necessarily written down, but I want to see that acknowledged more as some type of theorization, some type of knowledge, some type of intellectual practice, a politic.
You on the front row have a
Yes, my question is for Kunjo. I know your focus is black men sleeping, but do you think if your focus was white men sleeping, you would reach your goal for 100 people?
Wow, that's crazy. Cool. That is the wildest question. This is a good question. It's so funny. Oh, white men are funny, you know? Oh, man. So here's the thing. Let me think, because then I would have to think about, I would have to know a white man personally. I know of about 3, and I wouldn't even consider them like a friend. I don't have a white male friend at all. I don't know one white man's sister, or father, I have a couple associates. So that question is so interesting and so funny because I do know black people in the tech industry. I was living in the Bay, and I feel like in the Bay, if I was shooting 100 white men, I would have got that. I would have got that 100 so quickly. I would have been in, because it's so expensive in the Bay. A lot of people are like 5, 6, in the house, but it's a house. And they would have been like, boom, you'll go holler at my, you know what I'm saying? So the answer to that, yes. But I never thought about it. What I have thought about is if I was a woman or in the female body or female perceived body, I think I also would have been done. Now, but also the conversation is like how dangerous that would have been. How many people, how many black men would have said yes just to have them come over in the enclosed space where they feel they can dominate and be more and overpower, right? So, thank you for that question. That's the type of question I love. I'm sorry, what?
I have another question. I'm from the Bronx, but I want to know, how are you reaching out to people to do this? Like, is it someone you know,
Mm-hmm.
or like, because I feel like Soho is like the spot where you can find people who want to be shot.
Yeah.
Well, African American men want to be shot.
Here's the thing. I'm going to share with you right now that cis hetero black men, they don't mean to be dangerous. They don't mean to be homophobic, but they are. They don't mean to have, look, we're conditioned, and New York ain't no better than the next place. New York is worse. I won't even get into the statistics of like catcalling, rape. Like I won't even, and then you said the Bronx?
Yeah.
So no, New York is not better. I don't think there's a place in America that's better where I can find a group of black men that are like, yeah, I'm down. I've been in New York for 9 months. I'm in Bed-Stuy, I'm in Brooklyn, and I know it's very gentrified, but the homies are still there. And I know there's some educated black men who are like, da-da-da-da-da, and I live in Harlem, because Harlem people funny. They different, but they still are just as problematic as the next, My mom's always telling me a piece of paper don't mean nothing. Some of the craziest, meanest, dangerous people are educated. And so, for me, personally, I don't care about none of that until we have a conversation so I can see where your politics are. You know what I mean? Like, how aware of you, my history involved a lot of I perpetuated rape culture a lot in my past. But in my past, I didn't even know what that meant. And again, I didn't know what the male gaze was. I'm so lucky to learn these things. And now that I know, and I have conversations with a lot of black men, they have no clue what these things mean. But a lot of women know what they mean because they have no choice to know, right? And so that's a conversation about whose job is it? Now, I'm a black man, I'm a cis-hetero black man. My reflection is another black man. And I used to be like, I used to agree with the conversation about like, yeah, if you want us to stop doing this, then tell us and show us what we got to do, because I don't know. It's lazy thinking. And I hate it because you're asking these black women to not only take the bullshit, but also now teach you how not to inflict that bullshit. And that's just crazy and it's insane. It's a double burden. That's not cool. So I'm gonna end it with this, because there's a couple black men in the room, and I really try my hardest to give people actionable items or something to read. Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. Please read it. Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. Now I'm skipping Bell Hooks and I'm skipping Angela Davis because they're on this. They're in this. I'm not even I didn't go to college, so I can't really, articulate myself and break down the differences between those three, but I think they are very different, and I think Audre Lorde is the best place to start for many reasons. She married a white man, I believe. She was with a white man, and then she ended with a black woman. She had kids, so she had to raise her son, and she's having all these conversations, and she's talking about what it means to share power. A lot of us don't know, and for y'all in the room, the black men that's in the room, just please, man, learn to listen to the people you've been taught to ignore, because there's a reason you was taught to ignore them. You know what I mean? So that's, yeah. I appreciate you though. Yeah.
Could you sort of talk a little bit more about what you mean by cis-hetero black man? What does it mean to you and how it fits in this conversation?
I was born in this body, and I'm straight, and I'm black. So that sums it up. I'm straight. I was born with a penis, and I'm black. I identify as a man. I identify as a straight man. Now, I'm gonna tell y'all like this though. You can call me cis. We can talk about what's cute all day. I'm not fragile. I'm not, words mean things, but at the same time, it's like, it's all good. I'm not in that space where I'm just this dude who's like, nah, keep those pink shorts on the shelf. Like, what? Pink shorts are fly as fuck. Take them off the shelf, right? So, yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I may not even be the best on this panel to have conversations about all the different, things surrounding the LGBTQ community. But I have learned like what I am and identify as and what I'm comfortable identifying as. And I don't want to get away from this panel without all of us up here sharing something that was impactful in our lives that we can give to you. Or else what's the point? Like, what is the point? So, excuse my frustration, but Devin, no, we've been doing this for a while. I'm tired. Y'all.
Can I just add something?
So also, I know that there are black men in the room, but the one thing that I just want to say, in regard to engaging any black feminist text or womanist text, please by all means, if you're going to read it, practice it. This happens a lot where a lot of cishet men, you know, even men across the board will engage these things, and it later becomes weaponized to oppress and abuse subjects that are more marginalized than they are. So if you're going to read Audre Lorde, also recognize that Audre Lorde also had a history of abuse in doing those types of things. But at the end of the day, if you're going to read these texts, really, 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 really actually study it. I find that for so many different women, they've literally been harmed. Femmes have been harmed, and queer people have been harmed by people who will read Audre Lorde once and call themselves a black feminist tomorrow and move about in the world and just cause destruction. So if you're gonna really, you know, engage this work, please by all means really do it. And I just say that because it can just save so many people's lives, not even just your own, but there are just too many femmes, women, queer folk walking around with things that they don't need to be carrying because of the disingenuous nature of sometimes learning and educating yourselves.
I would like to ask you all, what were your subjects in the beginning of your careers, and was there any point or incident, something that made you do what you're doing now?
Did something happen in the beginning of our careers?
Yeah, what was your philosophy, your subject of your art when you started?
I mean, I personally was trash, and I was just shooting women naked when I first picked up a camera. So I was inspired by media. I was just super sexist. So the thing maybe was pain from friends going like, you can do better. Also people going like, well, you know, yeah, I agreed to do that, but I don't like the way you shared it and what you said with it, like your comment with the photo. So, you know, that hurt that person. I don't want to hurt people. So what does it look like for me to do the work? What does it look like for me to, my work literally transformed, and it's hard to find. It don't really exist anymore because I deleted Tumblrs because I was like fucking sick of myself. And I deleted Instagrams because it's like, I'm better than that. And so, pain for me from being a victimizer is what transformed my work and inspired what I'm doing today. And let me just tell you, healing is messy. Like, it's not cute. So,
So I'll start with the thing that made me do my art and then work to the beginning of my art. Yes, so I've studied as a performer my entire life in theater, and then as a musical theater major at Howard University, a professor told me after a scene analysis class that I had rewritten the script. And I was very confused because I thought I had done what she had assigned to me, and she was like, no, this is incorrect. You should probably look into playwriting because you have rewritten the entire script. And so I decided I would write scripts. When I reached this awareness of me being a playwright, my works were a lot more personal. My first piece in this new awareness was entitled Dialogue Between Black Women. In retrospect, the 3 characters in the play are 3 different versions of me. Had no idea when I was writing it. Thought I was showing these very different girls, and they are very different characters, but my friends who I employed to cast, or I employed to be in the piece and cast as the characters, were very quick to tell me, Korinn, this is you. Like, this is you, and this is you, and this is you too. Like, all these characters are you. And I had no idea. So that is where my work started out. And then from there, I realized that I really love research and I really want to make sure everyone's story is told, just like throughout the diaspora. And so my most recent work is about the integration of Miami Beach in 1964 during the summer. So it required a lot more research, a lot more of me stepping outside of myself, but then I also realized I'm able to find myself in these new characters that I've created. I'm showing 3 different age groups, 3 different locations that these people are from, and 3 different relationships to bodies of water as Black people. There's a couple that are maybe mid to late 20s, and they're in Tennessee, which is landlocked, and they have no real concept of the water. There's 2 young boys who are in Biloxi, Mississippi, who go to the water all the time until their ability to access public beaches is taken away from them abruptly. And then it's 2 girls in college at Spelman who are, of course, involved in the movement because college students during the Civil Rights Movement spearheaded the entire thing, but who are also very much college students at Spelman in the 60s who just want to party and have fun like everybody else. So I've realized that my work has taken this arc of being very, very about self and just getting out what I have inside to trying to combine what I have inside with what other stories need to be told.
I would say for myself, it did kind of start with trauma and then it became something else. So in my case, it started, I had like a really joyful childhood, but it went very dark. High school, and I'm very transparent about this, is one of the reasons why I want to make sure when I'm working with young people and other people that they hear this. But when I was in high school, I was like a really good student in high school, and I'll put good in quotes. But I was assaulted by this jock at the school. That wasn't really just where the problem came in. What happened was, out of fear that he would get in trouble for his actions, he spread rumors around with his friends. And they all decided to tell a story that they had all been with me. So as a result, I had to spend the rest of my high school career trying to navigate this space where the rumor was that I was a sex worker, but I was only 15 at the time. I went from that space to being a really good student to, by the end of my high school career, I mostly had F's on my report card because I couldn't focus. It was hard, it was trying, but what I will say, it was interesting because it was one of those things where my family, they never really gave up on me, but they were trying to figure out, how do we get her to kind of go back to a normal childhood after all of this has happened to her? I went through other things in time, and that made it harder. And eventually what I did do was, after learning that one of my bullies actually was assaulted by the same person, we linked up and became friends, decided to press charges. However, we lost the case. He was a serial assaulter. He went on even into Morehouse and other schools and did the same thing to several women. No, he is not in jail or anything, and I do have a perspective on jails. I don't necessarily believe in the carceral system. I think that there are other means of handling this sort of thing, but at the time I definitely was please throw this motherfucker under the jail. But my perception or my perspective of that changed. However, it was hard, okay? I did eventually go into the sex work industry. I did end up doing a lot of these things, and as a result, a lot of the things that people were saying or the rumors that they were spreading, I eventually became, oddly enough. However, I don't look at that as a stain on my personhood. I think if anything, it makes for a very interesting story. I became a painter. I did all of these things, and when my mother took ill, I just kind of lost interest in painting. She passed away. That was another loss. However, to go back to expressing how I had all of these F's on my report card, somehow I ended up getting into a school. somewhere like where I had a smaller learning environment and I was actually able to focus better. I transferred out of there, went to Temple, took this course, and Black Studies, I fell in love with it. It was like this place where I felt like not only can I just interrogate my Blackness, I can also interrogate something that happened to me that I know has actually happened to a series of other people. From that place, I went there, got my BA, then I went on to get my master's degree, and then from there I went into pursue my doctorate. So I think all of these things together, it just made for me, a really beautiful story. And I don't look at it as, oh, the sex work, oh, that is one of my darker times. No, I think it was actually one of my better times, actually. And I think it's fun, it's exciting, and it's hard. It's dangerous work, it's risky work, and I think that it's important for me to even say that as an academic, because there are a lot of people who would think like, oh, well, won't this stain your career? I would rather come into this being myself than being a fake-ass motherfucker being somebody else. So I want to tell this story to people to show that I hope that people understand you don't have to be an academic, one, to be an intellectual or to do this work, but I use my experiences to inform my academic work in the hopes that communally it reaches other people.
One last thing, if you want, I know we talked about the future a little bit, but if you want to say maybe what's coming up next, if there's something you can look forward to, how we can find you, so this community can stay in touch and support the work that you're doing.
My DMs are open for any conversations surrounding masculinity, Black masculinity. My DMs are open for exclusively Black men. And my Instagram is KUNJO_. Yeah, I'm really interested in exploring what the work we need to do as Black men look like. I'm constantly exploring what that looks like. And I'm not, this invitation, like, don't be afraid to reach out. And what do you say? You said the second part of it.
Just where they can find you to help support what you're doing.
And everybody can support. I shoot film, y'all. I shoot 35 millimeter film, and I shoot 120 millimeter film. And I am aware that there's hella grants out there. I'm in New York, and they're just like a plethora of grants and spaces and people ready to support you. I can't even, man, I wonder how much money I've spent on this project so far. So I definitely have a website, www.blkpillowcases.com, and there's definitely a donate button on that website. And it's been up for 2 years, and I have one person donate. Maybe, I think altogether, out of the 2 years, I've gotten $50. And that could speak to how no one gives a shit about us. Or I could not be marketing correctly. I don't know, but you can find me there. And you can always send your cis hetero Black man or any Black man dealing with like masculinity issues and trying to figure it out. If they think it's like an attack on masculinity, we attacking, send them over, like just put their IG in my shit and I will definitely be like, hey, how's it going? And start a conversation. So we're ending, is this the last, cause I feel like y'all getting off the hook a little bit. I feel like as a community, I have questions for y'all, but I'm gonna stay in my lane. But I just, I don't know, I appreciate y'all. And thanks for coming out.
That's what you want to ask if you want to ask something.
I'm with gas. I don't want to go in certain directions too, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to, I appreciate y'all though. I just feel like there's more to be talked about in Greensboro, right? And, I'm just looking at everybody. So, I'm just leave it there though.
I'm currently still working on that comparative essay. I hope to have it done by the summer. I'm also working on a ballet. So if you guys know of any dance studios, preferably those with black and brown children, it is a children's ballet, and it's an adaptation of Debbie Allen's Dancing in the Wings. And to keep up with me, I have a website. It's KorinnAnnette.com. I also have hard copy cards if you're into that sort of thing. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support my art by paying me. I have a lot more of my artistic process is on my Patreon. My poetry is on my Patreon, and also drafts of plays that may never be finished and those that have been are all on there as well.
I would say you can support me with like prayers and Cash App because I need it right now. So you all know I'm a student. So right now, what I need to be working on is my dissertation. So just send positive vibes if you don't pray, or just pray for me because I need all the support that I can get. Because I hope in time, like, the dissertation will be complete, and I also hope that I can get the doctorate so I can kind of move on with my life and do the next thing. So if you want to support me in that way, that's it. And in the Cash App, I'm so serious about that. You can support me there. You can ask me for it later if you want to. But if you want to keep up with me and my process and my progress, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at ZalU Ibaorimi. That's it.
Thank y'all for being here and being a part of this. I want to thank you three for giving your time and thoughts and ideas and artwork and sharing it with everyone. This show is up until the end of March, so there's a lot of time. If you all have things you'd like to do in this space, conversations you want to have, art making you want to have, dances, anything like that, let us know. We would love to support that, be a part of that, and just keep people coming into the space, experiencing this work, and keep these conversations going. This space is here for you, so your ideas, we just facilitate. So know that, and if you forget their information, DM us or reach out or come by and we'll feed it to you, and it's also on these papers. Thank you. Thank you.
It's